Okay, so we're 4 minutes past, so I'm going to kick things off. If anybody wants to join afterwards, they can do. So a couple of things to begin with. If you've got any questions, then use the chat on GoToWebinar. Punch a question in as it comes to your mind. So I know what it's like. You think of a question and you think, I'll ask that when, at the end in the Q&A period, and either we run out of time and that doesn't happen, or you forget the question. So just punch it into chat. Give us your questions as they come to your mind. If we can answer them at the end, we will do. If we can't, then we'll answer them after the event. But hopefully we'll have some time at the end to have an open session and some discussions, which would be fantastic. A few thank yous to begin with. I wanted to say a big thank you to Sarah for all of her efforts in getting the invites out and all the social media around this event. This is the first one we've done this year. We did some contact centre stuff last year. This is the first one we've done where we're mashing up technology and neuroscience and focusing on tackling workforce issues. There will be more, so we'll be running more. Some of them will be more technical, some of them will be more about techniques and the science and the research. So I hope you find it interesting. So thanks very much, Sarah, for doing all of that, and also Steph, who's going to be on later. Steph's one of our trainers, and she's going to actually be demonstrating how to use technology to tackle those workforce issues. So we can't go into it in any great detail. We only have a short period of time, so it's mostly going to be focused on science and sharing knowledge with you guys, but we will show some practical demonstrations at the end. Sarah was going to put the link to our newsletter sign up as well in the chat. So if you want to, while you're listening, just sign up to the newsletter if you haven't done already. If you're not sure whether you have or not, then please do that, because that gives us the ability to send you invites to other events. Some of the things we'll be covering will be to do with cognitive stress and cognitive overload, which is quite an interesting topic, and how we can reduce that in contact centres. So there's some cool stuff coming. So I would recommend that you sign up to that newsletter. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to switch this video off, share my screen, and then we'll start the presentation. So, Sarah, have you got my first slide?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. So, as I said, thanks for joining. I'm looking for people like you, and whenever I'm posting messages on LinkedIn and other channels, I'm always talking about this word pioneer. So I don't really want to necessarily spend a great deal of time talking to those traditionalists out there. We're really working at building a fan base of contact centre, customer experience and customer service pioneers. So registering for this event, in my mind, puts you in that list as a pioneer. You want to learn new ways to improve your contact centres, new ways to tackle workforce issues. So thank you for that. So have you ever wondered if a better understanding of the way the human brain works could make your job easier? Now, I've been a contact centre manager before, and I know some of the people on the call are also contact centre managers today. And you know as well as I do that a lot of your time is spent dealing with human beings. It's not the technology. Most of the technology is pretty good nowadays. Your call routing works well. You've got loads more features than you used to have. You've got ACD, which didn't even exist when I first started in this industry. And other skills-based routings to help you, and workforce management tools and all that good stuff. But the human part remains. It remains the biggest challenge. It remains the biggest cost. So understanding the human brain, certainly from my perspective and the research that I've been doing, has been extremely helpful. So I hope this webinar will help you guys reduce your stress levels, make your job a bit easier and more fulfilling. And I wonder if we align the way that we manage our agents and the way that we monitor and motivate them with the way the human brain works, how much of an impact would that have on your ability to achieve your goals and hit your targets? So what we're going to talk about today, what I'm going to talk about today, and what Steph's going to demonstrate today is not only am I going to share with you research from world-renowned neuroscientists, I'm also going to be explaining how some of the world's largest companies are using neuroscience to gain an unfair advantage in the workplace, and also helping you avoid some of the pitfalls of traditional monitoring tools like traditional wallboards. Hopefully, by the end of this, we'll be able to demonstrate some more scientifically proven alternatives that will allow you to tackle your workforce issues, allow you to reduce absenteeism, improve mental health, wellness, and eradicate disengagement from your contact centres. So the why. Why should we care about this? Well, over recent years, neuroscientists have been doing some really interesting studies around social pain. Now, some of you would have heard of social pain. Some of you, social pain might be something new. Social pain is any time where you feel undervalued, you feel unfairly managed, you don't feel part of a team, you don't feel connected to your environment. Any of those feelings will create what the scientists call social pain. Now that's interesting, and that's been around for a while. More recently, what they've discovered by using MRI scanning technology is that the human brain deals with social pain using the same resources and the same circuitry as the human brain would use to deal with physical pain. Now that suddenly makes social pain seem so much more important, and in my mind something that anybody who is managing people, anybody who wants to extract the best from their teams should understand and should be able to identify. So what happens if you're experiencing social pain? Well, firstly, if you imagine, I don't know, a third of your team, let's say you've got 100 contact center agents in your contact center, and a third of them come to work with a raging toothache. These guys are not going to be very effective. They're not going to be able to provide the same level of output that they would normally. They're not going to be as empathetic with your customers. They're not going to be as caring. They're not going to be as sharp because they're dealing with this pain that's raging in their tooth, and that's causing all sorts of changes in hormone levels and in the distribution of resources in their brain. And that's the type of thing that happens when your teams are experiencing social pain. So the scientists have found that blood and oxygen is moved away from the areas of the brain that we need our agents to be, fully resourced in. And the blood and the oxygen, those resources are moved away to dealing with the fact that they feel unfairly treated, or they feel like they've been, badly measured in some way. So this is something that we can tap into, start to understand, and this is something that we can use throughout our contact center, the way we measure people, the way we monitor them, and the way we communicate and motivate them. So that's the science. So who's using this? And when I put the Who up there, I thought of the band, and I remembered the most famous track by the Who, Generation, and I had a little look at the lyrics. And one of the key lyrics that anybody around my age, and I know there's some of you on there, will remember, people try to put us down. And it's interesting because I'm going to link to that later on when I talk about status and how some traditional monitoring tools, like traditional wallboards, for example, put our agents down. But this slide really is just a quick slide to show you that there are large organizations that are using this neuroscience, using this new research to improve their businesses. Now, these organizations are going around traditional training companies. They're circumventing traditional training companies, and they're going directly to the neuroscientists. And they're paying a premium to pull in neuroscientists who will train their senior managers at great cost, I might add, a lot more money than a normal training company would charge. And they're training their senior managers how to be staff compliant in the way that they motivate, measure, and deal with their staff. And they're getting great results from that. Now, when I read this, I thought, well, why can't we do this in a contact center? Why can't we simplify this? And why can't we use the SCARF model to make contact center environments more engaging and more brain-centric? Now, from our perspective, we do that using our wallboard software, but there are other ways that you can do that. And we'll demonstrate how Optimize does that later on in the call. So thankfully, the neuroscientists didn't just stop identifying where social pain is dealt with. They then looked at what triggers social pain. And this is where the SCARF model comes from. So status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So let's take status as an example. A traditional wallboard or dashboard that is only focused on call handling metrics instantly lowers the status of your agents. Now, the reason it does that is your agents don't go home, say goodbye to everybody, get in their cars, drive home, walk in the door, and then start talking to their partner about how many calls they took and how they kept within service level. That isn't what floats their boat. That isn't what gets them to come to work in the morning. That isn't what makes them feel fulfilled in the role working for you. What makes those guys satisfied, what gives them employee satisfaction, engagement, and all of the mental health issues around that, and all the positivity around that, is being able to deal with your customers in an effective manner. So the type of conversation that would take place is not, oh, I answered more calls than Dave sat next to me, or I kept within SLA today. That's pretty dull, really, and they're not really that interested. But they might say something like, I had a guy on the phone today, and he was fuming. And I'm so proud that I stayed calm, I turned the situation around. He actually told me I've given him the best service that he's had for ages, and he wished other service providers could do the same. That type of experience, where an agent has used all of his or her skills to influence one of your customers, that's the type of experience that makes them come to work, that gives them job satisfaction. And that's the sort of thing that they talk about. It's not the call handling metrics. And yet, with a traditional wallboard, we just display call handling metrics. And a lot of them, and some of them, the agents can't even influence. So when you start to include metrics around customer satisfaction, customer feedback, after call surveys, what you're doing is you're treating your agents much more fairly, which is the last letter in the SCARF, and you're increasing their status. And this is something that we recommend all of our customers do. And it's something they care about. They really want to know what the customers think. They don't want to know about it a week later. They don't want to know about it in the monthly meeting. They want to know about it in real time. And we have tools that will allow you to pull those metrics across and include them in your optimized templates. But what you're also saying there is we recognize how important you are. We trust you with this live feedback, and we empower you to make it improve customer sentiment. And that's a massive message. That's a huge message to send. And that should really be sent from your wallboards, because when you just have the call handling metrics on there, you're publicly stating you don't really value what they do on the call. You're more interested in how quickly they answer it. which, as we all know, isn't going to lead to any kind of success. So there are other ways. We've covered status and fairness. There are other ways you can increase certainty, autonomy, for example. In fact, certainty and autonomy, they're pretty easy. Certainty, you make sure that you're constantly telling your staff what a great organisation you are, what sort of things going on, new offices, money being given to charity, new products, all the sort of cool stuff that's going on. That will give them certainty. It will make them believe that they've made a good choice, make them think they've made a good choice, and hopefully they have made a good choice in coming to work for you. Autonomy is another one, keeping the agent up to date with what's going on. Now, autonomy is an interesting one because the more autonomous your agents feel, the more likely they are to be satisfied. So it's very important that you let the agents know what's going on in your business. So if you've got something that's gone wrong, a service that's failed or something that's not working, rather than going away and having a meeting about it and then sending an email to your agents, you can put it directly onto something like a wallboard via a scrolling message or a message board, and you can tell the agents what's gone wrong, what you as an organisation are going to do about it, and what the customers can expect from you in regards to further communications, clarifications, compensation, or whatever it might be. And as soon as you do that, not only do you increase autonomy, you also reduce stress, because the agents are going to be prepared for those calls coming in. So rather than that first call hitting that poor lonely agent who could be a new starter for all you know, and having a customer screaming at them about this service that's failed and how they've only been with you for a month and they don't expect things to fail, you're a big organisation, and you tell them you get 99.9% lifetime or uptime or whatever it is, rather than putting that agent through that very stressful scenario where they're putting the customer on hold, panicking, looking for a supervisor, and then everybody else is going, oh yeah, we realise that service failure has happened, let's tell everybody else. Rather than put them through that, you can use wallboards and those virtual messages to get that information to the agent as soon as you know about it. So that's a cool way to reduce stress and keep everybody on an even keel. Relatedness is another one. So relatedness is really linked to the feeling of being part of a team. So what the scientists have also found is the key driver for employee engagement and employee satisfaction is the social element. We are social animals. We don't come to work just for the money. And a contact centre agent can probably get the same type of money down the road. The reason they come and work for you is because you treat them fairly, you don't undermine their status, you give them the right tools to do a great job, you recognise their performance. But even more powerful than that is how they feel about others around them, how they interact with others around them. Now, if you've got a small team and everybody knows each other really well, then this is less of an issue for you. But if you've got a large contact centre, then you can use the wallboard screens to put birthdays up, for example, celebrate work anniversaries, recognise performance, and just keep reminding the guys that you care about them. And that creates that feeling of team, and that will create that feeling of connection, being respected, and being related almost to the other people within the organisations, because those friendships are hugely influential on your staff turnover, on your engagement rates, on your absenteeism. It's not about how much car parking you have, and how nice the building is and how nice the chairs are. They're kind of a given for a contact centre agent, and they expect a decent chair. It's about the relationships they have. So use the wallboards to remind people that you care about them. And while you're doing that, they'll use them. they're more likely to use them rather than those traditional wallboards that just sit there and become wallpaper. So leading on from this, our mate Dickie Branson there, who most of you have heard of, even if you've dialed in from the US. And by the way, if you have dialed in from the US, thank you very much. I'm sorry it's so early. We will be doing the next one a bit later for you, especially the guys on the West Coast, so they can join in, because I've had some emails saying the timing wasn't ideal for them. So we'll be doing them later, so you can have a line. But thanks for joining if you have joined from the US. So yeah, Richard Branson's all about putting the employees first. This slide really just demonstrates how much of a benefit it is for organisations to get the employment part right. And by focusing on your employees, becoming brain-centric and employee-centric, everything else falls into place. Your customer satisfaction increases. People are more willing to answer the phone for you faster than they ever did before, because they like doing what they do and they believe they have a common goal. So another little bit of evidence just to help you to understand that this is coming. This is the focus on workforce is really starting to gain momentum. It's something I've been looking at for years, but now it's really gaining momentum. This study by Gartner clearly shows that CEOs' priorities have changed, and workforce was the biggest mover when they did the survey in 2018 compared to 2017. So that's almost doubled in importance, that workforce, and now starting to get close to overtaking IT-related priorities. So, workforce is key. We all kind of knew that, but the evidence there is the evidence is now there to support you as individuals to push that message through your organisation and make sure that you get the funding that you need to create the right environments for your agents. So what could it look like from our world? From the optimized world, this is just one example. And you can see here where you've got all of those scarf-related elements are being represented by this wallboard. So we're recognising people's efforts, we're recognising how long they've been with the organisation, we're giving feedback from customers, we're being fair by measuring the complete life cycle of the agent's role, not just how quickly they answer the telephone, what they do while they're on the telephone. We're giving advice, news, feedback. You could have multimedia on there as well. You could have videos on there with training, which is considered to be very supportive and fair. But everything that we do here at SJS has to be SCARF compliant, and we work closely with our customers. So if you're not a customer already, then we will work closely with you to make sure that you gain the knowledge, not just sell your software and walk away, but gain the knowledge to be able to create templates which are brain-centric and work for your organisation. So what I would like to do now is introduce you to Steph Caney. She's going to take hold of the screen, and she's probably going to tell me how to do something that I don't know what to do. So hopefully she'll tell me in a moment. And I'll give her control of the screen, and she's actually going to pull up the latest version of Optimize so you can have a look at some of the features and then link them in to becoming brain-centric and link them into the SCARF model. So I'll talk you through how we do that, but I think it's important that you actually see that working so you can, rather than just conceptualize all of this, you can actually see how that looks, how a brain-centric decision about what information you display on a wallboard or what types of thresholds you set up on a wallboard, what that decision will mean to your agents. So Steph, are you going to share your screen for us, or do I need to give you control of the screen?
No, I can do it.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
So So before Steph starts with the first one, which is going to be what we call Boolean triggers, I just want to run you through a scenario. So those of you that run contact centres, you will know full well that sometimes, no matter how well you manage your teams, no matter how well you've got your workforce management pinned down, there will be times throughout the day where the demand on your agents exceeds the resources you have available. Now, under normal circumstances where you've got a traditional wallboard using traditional threshold rules, you can set a threshold to trigger a message like calls are waiting or customers waiting. Normally it's huge and it's red and it's got exclamation marks on it, and sometimes it's accompanied by a sound. These types of messages, they are definitely useful, but they're only useful if they are timed correctly. So in a normal scenario, it's completely possible that you have enough agents available and your service level is actually pretty good, but you still run out of agents in that particular second or 5-second period or 10-second period. You exceed your threshold for calls waiting. So let's say your threshold is 5 calls waiting or 10 calls waiting. You could have half your workforce sitting ready to take the call and still exceed that threshold. Maybe they just come back to lunch, maybe they're just logging on, and maybe your service level is very good. Now, what a traditional threshold rule will do is it will automatically give you the worst possible message. The message that's going to increase stress levels, that's going to increase the feelings of unfairness, and it's going to make the agent feel like they can't really win. They can't please you because, you know, we're all here, we're all answering the phone, but yeah, for whatever reason, you've done a marketing campaign or something, your queues have been absolutely hammered, and even if you had an extra 20% staff, which your boss is never going to sign that off, by the way, because it's too expensive and they'd be sitting around doing nothing for the rest of the day. But unless you had 20% staff on standby as overflow, you're not going to be able to deal with that volume. But yet you still send out that very negative message. So the scenario that Steph's going to run you through is by combining metrics, you then create a much more fine-tuned and a much more accurate illustration of what's going on in the contact center. And you avoid overstressing or panicking those agents. Because if you, every time that threshold is triggered unnecessarily, you can be taking agents off their after-call work or their admin work, for example, and moving them to then dealing with customers. Now, that might not sound like a big problem, but if you have to then reopen that support ticket or reopen that piece of administration and remember where you were and then carry on filling in the forms and putting in the complaint that the customer's made, that's extremely inefficient. Not only that, when the agent is moved from an administrative after-call work role where their brain functions in a certain manner and then pulled onto calls waiting by your wallboard and dealing with calls, they have to then use another part of their brain to provide empathy and all of the emotional stuff that comes with dealing with customers. And that creates something known as cognitive stress, which I'm going to talk about on a webinar probably end of September or middle of October. So cognitive stress will create real stress. It will reduce oxytocin, dopamine levels in the brain. It will make your agents less happy. It will increase, mental health issues and so on. So with the Boolean triggers, you can avoid that and make sure that you're only sending intelligent messages and only warning your agents when things are really going badly. So Steph's going to show you an example. Over to you, Steph.
Hi everybody. Okay, this screen that I've got up here is just demonstrating how to actually set up a trigger. And as Steve mentioned, we've now got the option to set up Boolean triggers based on the and or rule. So basically we're working on conditions. So for this particular rule that I've set up, this particular trigger, we want all the conditions that you can see here to be met in order for the resources low message to appear. You can also set up a trigger for any condition. So if any of the following conditions are met, you can have a message appear or something happening. So as you can see, the conditions that I've set up on this particular trigger, what we're saying are if queued calls is greater than or equal to 10 and queue time is greater than a minute and agent available is less than or equal to 1, the action that we want is we want the label that we're going to attach this to, we want that label to actually appear and to show. So this is just an example I set up of the type of trigger that you can do. And then if we just open up the page, just open this up, which is this page here. And this is the actual designer. This is how the designer looks. We can just zoom out and we can see we could put a trigger on this message, for example, which is just a label that I've set up. So if we double click on it, sorry, just need to get onto the correct layer. There we go. We can then assign the trigger that we've just set up to say that, which is the Boolean rule that we've just set up. We can have the actual label hidden. And what that means is that trigger that I've applied, when those 3 conditions are true, this pop-up message will actually appear. Now, depending on the data at the moment, see it's hidden right now, we may not see it. But if I just remind you of the actual trigger that was set up.
And these triggers, guys, sorry, Steph, these triggers can be set across multiple data sets as well. So yeah. you could even have a trigger that says, you know, if your service level is within your target and you've got enough agents available and your customer satisfaction is within your target, then you don't need to do anything. You know, even if your calls have gone over a little bit. You know, it depends on what you're trying to achieve as a business. You know, are you trying to will your business thrive? Will your profits increase? You know, will you get a bonus from your boss or whatever? You know, whatever drives you to do these things to improve your contact center. Are you going to achieve that by just answering the telephone quicker, or are you going to achieve that by dealing with customers better and having higher customer satisfaction rankings? So it really depends on what you want to achieve. But the scenario that Steph's put in here, that's a real emergency. You know, your call waiting is very high. You've got a lot of calls in your queue, and you've got very few agents available. Now, if that agent availability was 5, and your average wait was, I don't know, 10 seconds, then even if you've got 11 calls waiting, do you need to tell your agents? My suggestion would be no. And that's another opportunity to reduce stress in your contact center, because you're not going to display that message unnecessarily. Thanks, Steph. I think that covers Boolean. That was excellent. So the next thing we're going to look at, and again, we've got a mixture of people on the call. Some of you use the product on a day-to-day, use our older product, sorry, on a day-to-day basis. We might have some people that are on this version. So this is very useful whether you've got the product or not. They're just examples, so just a piece of technology that can be used to really tackle workforce issues. Because if you can create a less stressed environment and you can only, you know, drive changes in behaviour when you need to, and make sure that those changes in behaviour are aligned with your objectives, then your workforce issues will reduce, and you're more likely to achieve your goals.
You still there, Steve? Oh, I think we've just lost Steve there. We'll just give him a moment to come back on. Okay, while we wait for Steve, I'll just go in and explain a bit more about the triggers in maybe a bit more detail. If I just open that trigger up. Something I should have mentioned earlier is within the trigger you can set different actions. So the action we've got on this particular trigger for that resources low pop-up was to have it to show, but you can also set up other actions. So you could set up to play a sound. You can also set up to change colours. So for example, on a box that might have so for example, let me bring up, so this agent's available box here to have this background going red. You can set that up in a trigger as well. You can actually change a value as well. So there's lots of different options within the trigger setup. And as I say, you can have more than one action as well. So that's the way we've sort of created the whole trigger feature, is that you've got your conditions. So you have either all conditions being met or any conditions being met, and then you set your actions for that. As Steve said before as well, you can pick your data source, so your field value, where you pick your data source. So you've got your groups, your agents, or whatever data source that might be. And you've got specific as well. So basically the difference between those two, your field value is like an any rule, if you like, if that makes sense. So you can apply it to any group or any agent. So for example, you could set up a trigger saying if any agent is in a particular state, or if any group has queued calls more than a certain number. Your specific option is where you're being more specific to a specific group. So for example, the one I've done above here is specifically to sales, or to a specific agent, for example. So that's that trigger. Are you there, Steve?
Yeah, am I back?
Yeah, sorry, I just went into a bit more about the Boolean, the trigger setup while we were waiting for you. So
carry on. For some reason, it kicked me out.
Okay. No, we're back to you. I've covered the sort of Boolean stuff in a bit more detail, so you carry on where you left off.
Yeah, so with the dynamic messaging, what we've decided to do is give our users the ability to take over a much bigger area of the screen when it's someone's birthday, anniversary, or you've got an event or any type of news item. Because a lot of the wallboards contain information that either isn't real time or isn't actually necessarily, doesn't necessarily need to be there all the time. You want your key sort of 2 or 3 call handling metrics, and you might want a gauge maybe for your overall customer satisfaction, but you might have agent greets in there. You might have some sort of metric in there that you could afford to lose for maybe 5 or 10 seconds. So what the dynamic messaging does is it gives you the opportunity to really show the agent some love, and rather than just have a little image in the corner, which looks like a bit of an afterthought, oh, by the way, it's Darren's birthday or it's Richard's birthday, you can take over a huge chunk of the screen and overlay that image. So it really makes an impact. It gets everyone's attention, and it really makes the agents feel more loved. So Steph's going to just show you how that works. And the thing with this is you can switch it on and off multiple times throughout the day, and you can have it on the screen for as long or as short as you like.
Okay, so what I've done here, guys, is I've set up a birthday image, and I'm going to set up a schedule so that image appears over the top of this grid, the satisfaction survey rating grid. So it's going to cover that grid for maybe 2 minutes for a certain amount of time, and then it'll disappear again. So to do that, if we just go back into our trigger setup, I will explain the sort of scheduling side. I'll show you where that is. So if we go into trigger, and let me just find the correct scheduling example. There we go. This one up. Okay, so I set this one up earlier, but I just need to change these times. So what I'm going to say is, what we're on now, 2:45. Okay, so I'm going to have that message, that birthday message, appearing at 14:46, and I want it to be disappeared by 14:48. Okay, so we've got it on there for about a minute or so. I'm going to have it showing. Something I should have explained actually about the scheduling. It's within the conditions, and you can set schedules so you can have something appear on a particular day, on a particular date, or on a particular time, and you can say on, before, after, or between those certain things. So I'm sure we'll cover this in more detail on further sessions, but that's something that we've also included into the whole trigger feature. Okay, so I'm just going to make that 47. I've just the time, I make that 49. Okay, update that trigger, and then I'm going to go back into the page. Okay, open up the image. Make sure the trigger's attached, which it is. And then if we save publish, what time are we on now? 46. We should see that message appear. Let's just refresh the screen. And there's that message now. If we just wait for a moment, by the time it gets to 14:48, that message should disappear. I'll just make this full screen. And when it disappears, you should see underneath the customer satisfaction grid. As you can see, we've got other triggers going off on the screen as well. So we've got the calls queue as a trigger there that's showing the box being red. We've got a trigger on the agents available box there. We've got an RSS feed at the bottom. Okay, just a few more seconds. When it gets to 48, the happy birthday box should disappear.
It's amazing how long a minute takes when you're waiting for
I know.
it.
Might be 49. That's the problem when you're doing it live, getting the timings right.
Yeah, but the nice thing about this is you can use this again linked to other metrics as well. So you can recognize performance in customer satisfaction or different levels of training that people have achieved. New arrivals, if somebody has a baby or whatever. You can really make it clear to your employees that you've got your finger on the pulse, you know what's going on in their lives, and you care about them. And that's, it might sound a little bit soft to say that, a contact center environment where everyone's rushing around trying to answer the telephone and deal with customer complaints, but that's what makes it a human environment. That's what drives that social element, which is going to allow you to achieve your goals. Thanks, Steph. That was good. Okay. So the final feature that I just wanted to show you, so we can link that again into Scarf is the dynamic grids. Now, this has been something that will probably pertain to the customers on the call more than anybody else. I know we've got Mark on from the States there, and a few other customers, and Richard, I know, who I was looking at the product and would desperately like to buy it for his contact centre. So when initially the product provided a list of agents' names plus the state they're in, plus the time they've been in state, fairly standard stuff. Now that's all well and good, but if you've got a lot of agents, that's difficult to manage. In with our multi-page feature where you slide stuff on and off. Plus, it's not very efficient because you're not reporting on exceptions. So what we've done is we've created a completely new grid designer, which not only does all of your spacing and makes the grids look really fantastic in far less time than the likes of Mark on this call are having to spend to get their grids to look nice on version 5, but it allows you to create grids for agents in certain states. Now, I will caution everybody about using grids on a wallboard, because these wallboards are up in a public area in the agent's domain, and they should be designed to support the agents, not the supervisors. So I would highly recommend you don't use grids if you're trying to create a dashboard for your supervisors, because that's just going to alienate your agents, reduce their status, increase unfairness, and so on and so forth. I think you get the message by now. So by all means, you can use grids. Maybe you want to create a league table based on performance, based on customer satisfaction or sales. You can absolutely do that. They are self-sorting. You can link triggers, so you can have messages going off saying, sales is the top team, and then when service overtakes sales, service comes up and you have a message that says you're the top team, and so on and so forth, or even down to individual based on sales figures from salesforce.com or whatever system you're using. However, if you want to create a supervisor dashboard, I would either recommend you use the tools that you have within your contact center product, or you use what's known as Optimized Agile. Now, Optimized Agile will allow you to create any type of dashboard like you see in front of you in any resolution. So you can create a dashboard with agents at lunch, people who have been on the call the longest, all of those sorts of metrics that supervisors need to manage their people. But you create it in a smaller resolution and you make it available on a mobile phone or a tablet or a desktop. And you can also use desktops for home workers as well. So be a little bit careful with using grids. Make sure that it doesn't turn your wonderfully engaging, SCARF-compliant, brain-centric wallboard into a big stick for your agents. But Steph's going to show you how these grids are created. And like I say, if you want to create something for your supervisors, ask us about Agile licenses.
Yeah, so if I just go into one of these grids, I'll explain a bit more of the features and how they were created. So as Steve said, the grids are dynamic. So the way it works now is you select your data source and the data automatically gets pulled in. You choose your fields that you want to display on the grid. And then you can set conditions. So you can really filter down what is actually displayed in the grids. So for example, on the grid we've got here, we've said we don't want to show anybody who is logged off, and we only want to show people in these certain states here. You can also set the orientation of the grid, so you can make it horizontal or vertical. You can set how many items you can see you can paginate, so you can set how many items will show on the grid, and then set a display interval, so you can show, this example here shows 8 items and then after 15 seconds another 8. If you set the display interval to 0, it won't paginate, so it won't change between the items, it will just show, for example, if I set that to 0, it would just show 8 items and no more. So that's useful if you wanted to show maybe your top 3, which is this grid here. So this shows your top 3 and your bottom 3, who's been talking the most and talking the least. So for those 2 grids, I set the display interval to 0 and set the items to 3. So we were only seeing 3 items on the grid. And then you've also got your sorting, so you can sort by descending or ascending, and you choose what you want to sort by as well, which field. So if I just open this grid here, for the top 3, I sorted by descending, by talk time, and then for the bottom 3, where are we? Let me just have a look. I sorted by ascending. So the bottom 3 was ascending, the top 3 was descending. So again, we'll probably go into a lot more detail about this, but there's a lot more features within grids now to make them a lot more configurable. So you're not having to show lots and lots of information. You can just show exactly what you want to see. The other grid, I believe this one, is literally just showing teams, and shows the number of calls taken for each team. And again, it's sorted by the number of calls taken, so the highest number of calls is at the top.
Wonderful. Thanks, Steph. That's fantastic. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left. Any questions? You just punch your question into the questions panel or the chat panel. Sarah will have a look and tell me what you guys need to know. Anybody that's using the current Optimize 5 product, then if you've got any questions or if you want us to elaborate on anything that you've seen, let us know. If you're using the Optimize 5 product today, then definitely make sure you sign up to that newsletter, because we've got we're going to be launching an Optimize University, so we'll be doing some training webinars as well on specific items. So that will be useful. But anybody got any questions about the science? Anybody got any ideas of how they could use this research to improve their contact centers, or any scenarios that they're dealing with that you need some help with? You know, if you want to talk about it after this call, and set up a call with myself, and we can go through that and see what we can do to help you. I'd be happy to give you our best advice. Or you can just, like I say, just punch in your question on this tool. I see that is that a question from Mark there? Yes, Mark, the webinar was recorded and we will send it across to you. And I think somebody else had to duck out. I think it was one of our customers in Canada had to duck out. Yeah, Philippe had to duck out. So that's fine. We'll send him the recording as well. What else have we got here? That scarf model, is there an additional stand around trust here? For some reason I can't read the rest of that. What's the end of that question, Sarah? Can you see all of that? Scarf model, is there an additional stand around trust, peer and something something?
No, Steve, it's only showing up for you, unfortunately. I think maybe they've directly sent to you. It's hidden from myself.
Peer something levels. I can't seem to open that window properly, which is a bit frustrating. Go to webinar. I need to do a bit of work on that. Hold on, let me see if I can open it another way. There is definitely, I mean, to answer that question, there is definitely, there is a lot of research out there about trust in the workplace. It's a huge driver for employee engagement. You know, if your employees don't feel like you trust them, then, you know, you're fighting a losing battle, really. They're going to do everything they can to sabotage your success. And I've been in that environment. I was employed as a customer service manager years and years ago, and what they didn't tell me was I was the third customer service manager to run this department in that year. And these agents had already basically chased off 2 other customer service managers because they were a very close-knit team, and they didn't feel like they needed a manager. So there wasn't any trust in me to begin with, and I had to really think outside the box to try and create that trust, and had to create some lieutenants within the team to make them feel more important and drive the changes that way. So yeah, there is a lot of research out there in trust and around trust and respect, and anything you display or discuss is going to have an impact on whether your agents trust you or not. And the more secretive you are about technology, about changes in your business, the harder it's going to be to gain their trust. So the wallboards are a great way to say, look, we're transparent as an organisation. We understand how important you are. We understand that you're the direct link between us and the customer. No one does it better than you. We're the managers. We don't answer the telephone. You're on the telephone day in, day out. We trust you. We empower you. We'll share whatever information you want. And, we've had customers that get all of their agents together in a room and say, right, what do you need to know? What do you need to know in real time? What messages do you need? What outages do you need to know about? What metrics do you want to see? And when you create that level of inclusion, then obviously you drive trust as well, and you end up with an environment which is much more motivated and much less stressful. Hopefully that answers that question. We will answer all of these questions officially, if you like, after the call as well. Let's see if we've got any more. That's from Darren. Thanks, Darren. Thank you. Yeah, very good question around trust. I know Darren has a team of agents who are extremely highly skilled. So he deals with a lot of major account customers. So obviously if you've got a team member that's coming in and they're a bit slow, but they're being maybe given preferential treatment, or the other agents perceive them to be getting preferential treatment, you lose trust straight away. So yeah, managing people is very complex. The wallboards aren't going to solve everything, but it's a visual, a very bold statement that you understand the importance of the agents and you want to support them rather than just report on them. Right, we're a couple of minutes over, so I just want to say a huge thank you for everybody who's attended. We will be sending you a recording. Sign up for the newsletter. We'll invite you to the next one, and hopefully together we can start to create more engaging environments and make the lives of these agents a lot less stressful and a lot more fulfilling, and your job a lot easier. Thank you very much, and get in touch whatever your questions are. Thanks for now.